any file within your container is gone if your container crashes for any reason. To help with that, Kubernetes supports lots of volume types. And also, you can use all these volumes at the same time. So, today's topic is Kubernetes volumes. This is Naren Krish and you are watching. By default, when you try to write a file from within your container, it gets created within the container's own file system. Let's call it as container storage. Let's take example of a pod. This pod is made of two containers, container 1, container 2. Both have a process that writes the current date every 10 seconds to a file. By default, this data is stored on the container's own file system, which is not accessible by another container even if it is running in the same pod. In other words, the file written by container 1 can never be seen by container 2 and vice versa. Let's scan the files generated by each container. As you see, if you look at the files generated, those files are independent of each other as they are within their container file system. Also, when your container crashes or restarts, this data is gone. Now, what if you want your file to be accessible between containers of the same pod? You should start using volumes. The simplest of it is mtdir or empty directory. This is a disk space that gets allocated to your pod once it is deployed to a node. As the name specifies, it just comes with an empty directory. The direct way to use volumes in Kubernetes is to have volumes attribute at the pod spec level. Then you have to have volume mounts at each container level. Note, the same volume can be mounted at different folders in each container. This gives a shared file or folder for all the containers within the pod. But remember, mtdir, as the name says, always gets you an empty directory when your pod comes up. So during container crashes, data will be safe, but if your pod is deleted, data is gone. The next scenario is when you are interested to have a specific file or folder of the node mounted to your pod. This is called host path. As you see, you have to specify the type as host path and the path should point to the folder in your node. Then you can use volume mounts to mount this folder inside your containers. Let's create this pod. Now that the pod is created, I can cat the files from within the container. It shows contents of my file present in my node, which is mounted to the container. This way, data will be safely stored in the node even if your pod or container crashes, and it will be remounted if your pod comes up in the same node. But apparently, if your node crashes, your data is gone forever. Also, if your pod crashes and get rescheduled in another node, your data is gone. Before we proceed, if you're already liking this video, don't forget to press the subscribe button and notification bell icon so that you will be notified with our new videos. The next type of volume called local, which is very similar to host path, but it lets you mount local disk or partition to your pod. It uses concept called persistent volumes, which we'll cover in our future sessions. Due to that abstraction and node affinity we'll define in persistent volumes, your pod will always be scheduled to the same node again and again, and that way your pod will have access to the files. There are other sophisticated volume types like AWS Elastic Block Store, used to provision an EBS volume in AWS, NFS, to mount your existing NFS share to the pod. That way you can preload data and also share it across pods. We can see demo of those in our advanced series. Hope you got a basic idea of volumes in Kubernetes. This is our last video of our Kubernetes Simplified series for basics. But hold tight, we'll be coming up with Kubernetes Advanced series where we'll cover some advanced topics including production setups and patterns. And not only that, we are planning to come up with DevOps for Dummies and Cloud Native series. Do subscribe and follow our channel to get these updates then and there. Last but not the least, we'll be sharing bite-sized tips on those topics almost daily basis. So make sure you press that notification bell icon. Thanks for being awesome. Have a nice day.